there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and it's been a little while, but I'm coming back with one of my rapid-fire roundups. The idea behind these videos is that you're going to be seeing the opinions of somebody who was not part of the initial review at the Dice Tower, but has played the games and has something that they want to say. So here I've got 10 games that have been reviewed by others on the Dice Tower, but you have not heard what I have to say about them yet. You've heard the rest. Now hear my opinions. All right, so 10 games, and I'm going to put this right up at the front of this video so that I can, prevent the commenters from already going out there. These games are all games I like, period. They're all games that I would recommend. Now, it's not that I've not played any games that I don't think are necessarily up to the quality of a recommendation, but it's more that the games that I've been playing lately are quite good. They're coming from Gen Con and Essen, and kind of the cream has risen from the rest. And also, the games that I've played that haven't been as good are not necessarily getting reviewed by others on the channel. So that preliminary thing out of the way, let's just get right to the games. My first game is a game called Fruitopia, and I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. Fruitopia is a small card game. It is trick-taking, but a very light trick-taking game where you've got a river of face-up cards that you know that you're going to have to be dealing with when you are playing your cards out. So the other players, everybody that's playing is going to play a card, and then you have this river card that you have to contend with as well. And whoever wins the trick, wins the cards, are going to be placing them into face-up piles in front of themselves. That's going to be used for an endgame scoring. Clever little game. I don't know that it has enough there to make it something I'll come back to over and over again, and that's why I kept it at a 7. I can recommend it, especially for people that like light trick-taking games, but maybe not quite as much meat on the bones as I would like. Coming up next is Marvel United Spider-Geddon. I'm giving this a 7.5 out of 10. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that the core game system is spectacular, because I do. I've rated Marvel United, I believe, a 9. What I'm talking about specifically is this set, because it works both as a standalone kind of entry-level set so that you can just start with that. You don't need any other content, or it could be used to be added to any of the number of Marvel United products out there. And as a core set, which is really how I'm rating this, I feel like it's good because it's still that core game system, but I also feel like it's a bit limited compared to other core games, the original Marvel United or the X-Men core box, because you have one character, right? And so if somebody is a huge fan of especially the recent animated Spider-Man films, the Spider-Verse movies, then I think that this will be something that they'll be very excited about, very interested in. But if you're not, then you really don't have as much variety. You've got Spider-Man characters. Now, they are cool, and I definitely am going to be incorporating them in my games, but I'm not likely to play just the Spider-Man characters very often. So 7.5 out of 10 for Marvel United Spider-Geddon. Next up, also at a 7.5, is Dracula vs. Van Helsing. This is a very interesting two-player trick-taking-esque game where you are either playing Van Helsing or Dracula, and it's slightly asymmetric in the win conditions. You've got a map of, I would assume, London. No? Maybe Transylvania? I don't know. I have no idea where it's set. Anyway, but it's a map that's broken up into, I believe, 5 different sectors, and each sector has a number of kind of citizens, innocent citizens that are there. And what Dracula's goal is to get citizens turned into vampires in every one of these regions. And what Van Helsing is trying to do is prevent that from happening and damaging Dracula. Dracula has a certain number of health points, and so if Van Helsing can destroy all of those health points, Dracula is defeated. If Dracula can turn enough people into vampires in all of those regions, then Dracula will win. And it's played using a somewhat of a trick-taking style thing where each region has a card that's going to be it's actually a tile, that's going to be evaluated from left to right, depending upon who's facing, who we're talking about. But it lets you do some manipulation of the tiles. There's some interesting things, and it's definitely one I recommend, but there's something about it that just feels like it's not going to be one, again, that I come back to over and over and over again. I feel like once you kind of get the idea behind it, especially if you're playing with the same person, that you might start falling into some metas that may make it a little bit less satisfying. I think if you're always playing against new people, that would be more exciting, but still a good game, still one I could recommend, Dracula versus Van Helsing. Coming up next is a sequel to one of my favorite games of all time. This is Expeditions, which is a sequel of sorts to Scythe. I'm giving Expeditions an 8 out of 10. I really enjoy the game quite a bit. It honestly, it feels enough like Scythe that I'm fine with that branding, and I love the lore and the look of Scythe, and so I'm happy to see it again here in Expeditions. But gameplay-wise, it's very, very different. It doesn't really have much in common gameplay-wise. This one is, although there are tiles that make up a board, and you're moving a mech along those tiles, this is really much more of a card game and multi-use cards, and I tend to love multi-use card games. So I've had some very satisfying plays of this, but the reason why it doesn't go higher than an 8 for me is I feel like it has some player count and scaling issues. The map doesn't change at all depending upon number of players. I think this should never be played at 5 players. I think that's a recipe for disaster, long downtime, and not much you can do to plan for your next turn because things are going to be changing. So at it has a very good solo mode. At 1 to 3, that's the sweet spot. Don't love 4, no interest in 5. So there you go, Expeditions, an 8. Next is a game called Cyberion. This is the newest game in what is called the Oniverse line from designer Shadi Torbey. They are all primarily solo, although they can also be played 2-player, but I almost always play them solo. Games that are driven by some different kind of mechanic, and he'll put them out kind of in chunks. You know, so he had a few games that were back to back to back that used dice, and mostly they're card games. But I was a little bit concerned coming into this because the last game, Stellarion, was one that I did not particularly enjoy. And so I was a little bit concerned coming into Cyberion. Is this something that's going to be kind of a return to form? And I can happily say that for me it is. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I feel like this one gives me what I love in Shadi Torbey games, which is a core system that is relatively easy to understand and has enough depth that you can play it a number of times until you kind of start figuring out the different strategies that work for you. And then it comes with multiple expansions that you can add in to kind of raise the difficulty. Very, very much you can raise the difficulty in the game, even though the base game was challenging enough for me for the first few plays. But not only that, but it can also kind of take it in different directions that you might find that, oh gosh, I really like what this adds. I'm going to always play with this module. Maybe I'll mess around with these two once in a while. But they're all worthwhile. The modules, I think, all worked quite well. But this one, just the core game, is one that I really feel is solid. It's easy to understand, not easy to win. That's Cyberion. Coming up next is Vale of Eternity. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 as well. This is coming from Korean publisher Mondu Games, and it is a card-driven game where you are playing out cards, you're drafting cards, playing cards, paying for cards with other cards, using cards as currency. It has a very unique currency system where you have a limited number of what they're called as stones. The stones are the different currency. And so they've got 6-point stones, 3-point, and 1-point stones. I believe that's correct. And you can only ever have 4 stones total. All right. And so if you have a card that you want that's going to cost 5 to put into play, you can pay for it with a 6, but you're not going to get change. And you can't use that extra 1 with other currency to pay for a different card. Each card has to be evaluated individually, and so it leads to a nice, tight economy and a game that really rewards repeat plays. It's not the type of game I usually go for because there's a little bit of that collectible card game feel to it, and I don't usually love those, but I felt like all of the card actions and powers were easy enough to understand that I wasn't getting lost in keyword soup. So I really enjoy Vale of Eternity. Next up, we've got Ring Circus, which is one of the medium box games in the DeVir lineup, Spanish publisher DeVir. And I have really liked these medium box games. I'm talking about games like the Red Cathedral and why am I getting lost on the other ones? Ring Circus. Bamboo. Yes, okay. Bamboo, Red Cathedral, Ring Circus. This one I'm giving an 8 out of 10. I really, really like this game a lot. It uses an interesting mechanism where you've got this non-player character, which is basically the Barnum and Bailey circus that's traveling to the big cities, right? Whereas you, being a smaller circus, are trying to kind of ride on the coattails a little bit of the Barnum and Bailey circus and gain more popularity and prestige by going to these towns that Barnum is going to be going to or has been to, whatever the case may be. And you're also going to the smaller regional cities. And so this is done primarily through a card system that I find very satisfying, where you are kind of drafting different or purchasing kind of cards in a market, and you're placing them into your 3 rings of your circus, which is your player board. I think it's a very beautiful looking game. I really like how they handle the scaling of the board. A lovely production, a game I like quite a lot. That is Ring Circus. Hey, remember a minute ago or a few seconds ago where I was talking about how much I like the DeVir medium box line? Well, you can add to it with the White Castle. This is a game that is it's not the follow-up, but it's the game that was released after Ring Circus by DeVir. Man, this is good. It's so good. It's from the same designers as the Red Cathedral, and I'm giving it an 8.5, a seal of excellence on this. I absolutely adore what this does with 9 actions. So essentially, you've got 3 rounds of the game, and in each round, each player is going to be drafting 3 dice, and you're going to be drafting them from bridges, which basically are going to put them into sections from low to high, the dice values, okay? And so you're drafting each turn, you're drafting one of these dice. And if it's a lower number, you're going to probably get some type of benefit that is on your player board that you're building up throughout the game. So you are not stuck with low dice. Sometimes you're incentivized to use those low dice if you want to get some resources that you've been kind of building up. But the higher value dice are going to give you stronger actions, okay? And so I like that mechanism already, but it also leads to kind of comboific type things where you are building things up, building things up, building things up, and then with one die, which is technically one action, it can turn into multiple actions and kind of, waterfall effects of points and bonuses and resources. It feels very satisfying. It's a tight game and it's quick. For the type of game experience you get, it's very quick. Very, very happy with the White Castle. Next up, we've got Sail, which I'm also giving an 8.5. This is in one of the all-play publisher small box game lines, and this is a 2-player cooperative trick-taking game. It was originally a Japanese game called Hamlin Cave that I never did play, but I heard about. It was very hard to get a hold of. So when I heard that this was a re-implementation of that game with some tweaks being made, and then even more so, expansion materials added that really kind of changed things up, I was very excited to play it, and it lived up to the expectations I had going in. It's a game that really, again, will reward repeat plays, especially with the same player, so that you can kind of learn how the other acts, because it's a limited communication game where you are trying to play tricks to move your boat forward to reach a destination, which is on like a kind of game board, okay, that's modular and can be changed. And on this game board, there are some obstacles. You've got things that you can't go past. There are some dangers like Kraken that are out there on the board. And what you're doing is whoever wins the trick is going to move the boat forward in their direction, because players sit across from each other. And so it leads to some very interesting, thinky gameplay where you're trying to determine what your partner might have, what you have. You've passed them some cards at the beginning of the round, so you know some of what they have. They know some of what you have. But it's very, very, very interesting, and you can add in all kinds of things to make it more difficult, make it easier. Very, very satisfying and unique trick-taking experience, that's Sail. Last one, and let me tell you, this is the game that probably surprised me the most. Because when I heard about it, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, yeah, but I didn't think I would personally have any interest in it. What I'm talking about is Thunder Road Vendetta from publisher Restoration Games. And so if I played Thunder Road, the original, as a kid, it's certainly possible, but it didn't leave any long-lasting memories for me. And so I was like, oh yeah, I remember that game, kinda, sorta, that's cool, but again, not really interested. And then I played it, and I fell in love. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. This is just fantastic. Just a fantastic game. Now, you have to know what you're getting going in, right? It is chaos personified. Each player is going to generally start with 3 vehicles, a small, medium, and large, and it's very possible you could get knocked, one of your cards could get knocked out on the second turn, right? Potentially even the first turn if you don't go first. But you have to chalk it up to just sheer ridiculousness, chaos, but a clever dice system that really does make you feel engaged. And if anything, I've never played a game that has made me more willing and almost looking forward to taking crazy risks before. It's not that I don't care if I win the game. I'm happy if I win the game, but you know what I'm more happy to do is try to create a memorable moment, all right? So if I know that launching off of a ramp that has some radioactive goo in front of me, or a mountain that's potentially in front of me that I can fly into, makes it likely, more likely than not, statistically, that I'm going to lose that vehicle, I'm usually going to do it because the story, if you make it, the cheering, if you make it, is worth that risk. It's that type of game. It's also a game that I've introduced to my 15-year-old and 21-year-old sons, and they both absolutely fell in love with it and have their own copy of it now. So, incredible production, fantastic game. If you're in the mood for Death Race 2000 or Mad Max Fury Road, look no further than Thunder Road Vendetta. It really is spectacular. All right, well, that's going to do it for me in this rapid fire roundup. A really solid slate of games. That doesn't always happen on these, but these were some really, really good games. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex. Chickity check, 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 check it. Hello, hello, hello. Hey there, everybody. It's a little too intense. Slow it down. Calm down.